At the bottom of the Bering Sea lies not just silt. There lies a lost land. Once, there was no strait here. There were number 86 kilometers of water between Alaska and Chukotka. There was no border between Asia and America. Here stretched a vast, cold plain, roamed by mammoths, bison, horses, predators, and humans. To us, this place seems like a sea. To them, it was a world. A world of grass, wind, rivers, camps, hunting trails, and horizons that did not end in water. And then the ocean returned. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but relentlessly. The coastline changed. Valleys became bays. Hills became islands. The road between the continents disappeared beneath the waves. And when the water finally closed, two worlds that for millennia had been one, parted forever. Pause. Shot. The modern Bering Strait from space. Today, we call this land Beringia. This is the story of the place through which humans reached America, and of a world that vanished so slowly that generations could witness its end. Approximately 30,000 years ago, the planet was entering one of the coldest stages of the last ice age. But a glacial world is not just about the freezing cold. It is also about water disappearing from the ocean. Billions of tons of seawater evaporated, were carried by clouds over the continents, fell as snow, and never returned. The snow accumulated, compressed, turned into ice. Year after year, century after century, the ocean lost water, and the glaciers claimed it for themselves. Sea levels dropped. For the deep ocean, this changed almost nothing. But the Bering Shelf was shallow. In many places, the depth there was only tens of meters. And when the sea retreated, the seabed began to emerge. This was not a bridge in the conventional sense. Not a narrow strip of land. Not a river crossing. Not a path between two shores. It was a plain. A vast, open landscape that connected Asia and America into one continuous world. And the greatest wonder of Beringia was not that it appeared. The greatest wonder was that it did not become a dead, icy wasteland. When the ocean level dropped tens of meters below its current state, a vast expanse opened up between Asia and America, which today lies beneath the Bering and Chukchi seas. Scientists named this region Beringia. The name comes from Vitus Bering, an 18th century European navigator. But long before European cartographers, these shores, islands, and waters were known to the peoples of the north. To them, this was not a discovered land. It was a land of their own, part of the great northern world. In a broader sense, Beringia encompassed not only the land bridge between the continents, but also adjacent parts of Siberia, Alaska, and the Yukon. That is why it is sometimes described almost as a lost subcontinent. It was far too vast to be perceived merely as a road. Here, you could live. Here, you could hunt. Here, you could be born, grow up, and die, never even knowing that you stood on a land destined to one day disappear. To imagine Beringia as solid ice would be a mistake. Glaciers covered northern America and other parts of the continents, but Beringia itself remained largely ice-free. The climate was cold, dry, and harsh. But it was this very dryness that prevented snow from accumulating into massive ice sheets. Instead of ice, there was the mammoth steppe. It was one of the largest ecosystems of the glacial world. Open, windy, grassy, seemingly harsh at first glance, but highly productive. Grasses, sedges, mosses, lichens, and low shrubs grew here. This alone was enough to sustain vast herds of animals. After the peak of the glacial maximum, the climate began to change. The glaciers retreated. Water that for millennia had been locked in ice sheets was returning to the ocean. At first, the changes might have seemed local. Lowlands filled with water. Dry areas became marshes. Old trails were severed by lakes. Beringia was flat, and this was precisely what made it vulnerable. For a mountainous land, a few meters of sea is almost nothing. For a low plain, a few meters of sea is a sentence. Around 14,000 years ago, the rising ocean became particularly noticeable. Only the higher ground remained of the Great Plain, the Diomede Islands. St. Lawrence Island, St. Paul Island. These islands are not just dots on a map. They are fragments of an old world that was once dry land. The story of St. Paul Island became particularly important. When the sea cut it off from the mainland, some of the mammoths were trapped. They did not disappear immediately. They lived on this small remnant of former Beringia for a long time to come. Beringia vanished, but its legacy remained. They remain in the genetic history of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. They remain in the languages, migrations, archaeological traces, and routes that scientists are still trying to reconstruct. They may lie beneath thick layers of sediment at the bottom of the Bering Sea, in the form of animal bones, ancient landscapes, and traces of campsites yet to be found. The underwater archaeology of this region is only beginning to uncover questions that do not yet have complete answers. And on the surface remain the peoples of the North, for whom the strait was never just a line on a map. Today, there are 86 kilometers of water between Alaska and Chukotka. But if you look beneath the waves, it is no longer just a strait. It is a submerged road. A road along which humans once crossed into a new world.